on the Monday, I got a call from the nurse saying, can you come in on the 13th? The surgeon wants to speak to you. But of course, you do whatever you can. You just hope there's that slight bit of hope that it is fibrous tissue. But yes, 3 days after my 24th birthday, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Just being told you've got cancer, then all these calls coming in, it was very, very overwhelming. But yeah, it all happened really quick. I had the scans in within a short period of time. I then went for my fertility preservation, and then it was straight into chemo. So yeah, being diagnosed October the 13th, so then starting chemo itself in December, there wasn't a week that something wasn't really happening. So obviously I knew chemo, there is the chance of going in, because it happened to my mum the first time she went through chemo. It put her into a permanent menopause. It stopped her periods. So I knew that was a possibility, but I didn't really think about that at the time. But they brought it up. I think they said you can go through fertility. And it was also mentioned to me I could go on Zoladex injections throughout my chemo as well, to put me into a medical induced menopause, to try and help increase my chances of my periods coming back after. They did mention to me, I think before my diagnosis, the genetics counsellor, saying that if when I do eventually have children, because there's a 50% chance of passing the BRCA1 gene on to my own kids. There's this special IVF route I could go down to try and make sure I don't pass it on. It's this type of genetic testing. So when you have, for egg preservation, you can either have your eggs frozen or embryos. I had eggs frozen. So what they would need to do is turn them into, so get the eggs fertile and turn them into embryos. And once they are embryos, they genetically do this genetic test. I'm not quite sure what it's called. But they can test for the BRCA gene, and any that have the BRCA gene, they can be like discarded, or I think used for scientific research, whatever they want to do with them. And then the ones that don't have the gene, I can then use to try and hopefully get pregnant with. So I just thought, and I spoke to them when I went for my initial appointment to talk about the egg harvesting, about that as well. So I thought, yes, if I can have eggs frozen now and use them when I do eventually want to get pregnant, to try and go down this special route, so I don't pass the genes down. So it kind of worked out well. So I want to try and go down this route if possible. Then if not, I will obviously go down the natural route. So I was offered to go on this trial, a partner trial. So I thought, yes, I'm going to do, obviously, not only helping research, but I'm going to just take whatever I can to try and get rid of this cancer. So I was on carboplatin and paclitaxel um, as my main course. And then for part of the trial, alongside that, I had to take every day olaparib tablets for part of the trial, which was a kind of chemo tablet. I think it was maybe one of the later stages, because I know they'd done initial trials with two tablets before, and then it went on to, right, this is the tablet that we want to use. And I could have either been put into the group that didn't receive the tablet, or I did receive it. And I'm kind of glad I did receive the tablet, because for me, it felt I've got another chemo on top of what I'm already being given. So I did that for 4 cycles. The carboplatin was once every 3 weeks at the beginning of each cycle, and the paclitaxel was every week. So then, yeah, at the beginning of each cycle, it was a double infusion. And then I went on to, after the 12 weeks, well, what should have been 12 weeks, because I had the break because of my platelets. I went on to EC for 3 cycles, which was given every 3 weeks. So that lasted 9 weeks. Yes. For me, I think so. I typically had my chemo infusions on a Thursday, and then it was the Monday and Tuesdays when it hit me quite hard. Fatigue, that's throughout all of chemo, that's been the biggest and consistent side effect. I was only actually sick once, and that wasn't until EC, my second cycle, but I did feel sick. I felt quite dizzy and lightheaded a lot. Um, Obviously very weak, hair loss, obviously. But yeah, I did my platelets on EC. I think it must have been because I was just on 3 lots of chemo. My platelets dropped extremely low. So I did have to have a platelet transfusion, because I remember taking the cannula out, putting my jacket back on, feeling my arm was wet and just blood gushing down my arm. And luckily, I was seeing my oncologist the next day. He told me my pre-chemo bloods were um with were a bit low still. And then he rushed me to have another blood test done, and that's when he said they've dropped down to 12. So which explains why the blood was running down my arm as much as it did. And he just sent me for an immediate platelet transfusion. And then from then, luckily, with being on lower dosage as well, the platelets went back up and I was fine again. But they were the only scans and tests I really had throughout chemo. I was getting nosebleeds, bruising extremely easily. I didn't even bump myself and I was noticing bruises. I did also have a horrible taste in my mouth quite a lot. I think from the mixture of the saline solution that obviously it had a lot of throughout chemo, also chemical taste. So that was making me feel sick quite a lot. Um, when my platelets dropped as well, I was getting a lot of mouth ulcers. I had a really bad one at one point as well. I drank a lot of water. Staying hydrated is the main thing. A lot of people can't drink plain water, but I love water anyway, so I didn't have that issue. But a lot of flavored water, um, as well, sugar free. I sucked on a lot of mints, and things like lemon drops as well, which helped with the taste. But I started chemo, I think it was around the 2nd of December. And then before I started chemo, because I had my hair was initially down to my waist. Um, so just before I started chemo, I had it cut shoulder length, so it wouldn't be such a big shock when it did start to fall out. I was obviously there is the option of cold capping, but I didn't think that was for me. I just thought I'll just embrace the hair loss. And then I think it was just before Christmas, so it must have been around a couple of weeks in, I started to notice like the odd like strand of hair coming out, but it wasn't too noticeable. It wasn't actually until I went out for a meal with my boyfriend and a couple of friends that I was out for the meal. I touched my hair and the first big clump came out. So of course that kind of for me, I try not to like ruin the night, but for me, it kind of put a bit of a downer on the night. And then from then, I just clumps every time I touched my hair, brushed it, washed it. I woke up the next morning hardly sleeping because I was in so much pain from my head. And I had a massive, I think it was like about that big mat on the back of my head. And I just knew, I was like, Josh, it needs doing. So I went to his that night and we went to his mum's and she just shaved it for me. And the difference in how much I'd lost into from just in that one day, the afternoon, it was I couldn't have gone longer. It needed doing. So it was kind of I didn't cry. I was expecting to cry when it happened, but it kind of didn't hit me until later on, a few days later. But it was just kind of such a relief that the pain was no longer there. Um, and obviously I didn't look as bad as I thought I was going to look. I hated it, but I was expecting to look a lot worse. So I think it was just the relief that I didn't have to cope with all the shedding anymore and the pain. I think it was as I'd finished my first part of my chemo regime, I had an ultrasound just to see how it was progressing. And that's when they told me they couldn't see the tumor itself, they could only find the marker. The ultrasound was actually the lady who did it, she was actually really confused at first because she couldn't find the tumor. She thought the marker had been placed in the wrong place. Um, and she had to look back on the original scan to see that. So obviously I'd had a really good response to that. Um, and then it wasn't until I finished all of my chemo, I then had my final breast MRI scan just to as a final after chemo check. I remember coming out of the halfway ultrasound and I just walked into the waiting room to my mum and just burst into tears. Obviously, I didn't want to hope for anything until I'd had the confirmation from the nurse or oncologist. Um, but just knowing that. But then there's also that I didn't want to get my hopes up too much, because obviously there's still little cells that could have been floating around my body that aren't picked up on scans and only on the pathology. So I finished chemo and then I saw my surgeon. He told me of the potential, like my options for surgery. And then a week later, I went to see him again and told him my decision. Then I got a call from, I think it was oncology the next day saying, we've actually got your results back. do you want to come and see your oncologist on the Friday, the next day? And yeah, the 17th of June, I got my results back saying I was all clear and cancer free. Me and my mum just looked at each other in the middle of the waiting room and just cried and hugged each other. It was just the relief. I was quite stressful because my surgeon told me, saying, these are your options, come back in a week. So it was very stressful being told. In a way, it was good that I had some freedom of what I wanted to happen to my body. It was still a bit daunting being like, hang on, it's such a big thing and I've got to make this decision. It would be just so much easier if someone else made it for me. Me and my boyfriend did go away for the weekend after as an end of chemo treat before my surgery break. So I tried to not think of these options, just put all of that to the back of my mind, just enjoy the time away together and then focus more on it when I came back. It was just trying to prepare mentally for it and get everything, trying to figure out what I needed to take for surgery. So it was all comfortable for when I got back. But yeah, it was very daunting because up until that point, I'd had scans, appointments, and then suddenly there was this 2 week break of nothing. And all I had was, I'm having a double mastectomy. Yes, it was my choice to have the double and not just a single, but I only have 2 weeks left of my body. It was just trying to, make the most of doing things while I could, going out without putting myself too much at risk before surgery and making the most of things. Try not to think about it too much until the time came. I definitely had to have my left breast removed because of the node involvement and being BRCA1 anyway, because of radiotherapy. I wasn't allowed to have reconstruction on the left side just yet. So I could have a double mastectomy and stay flat, or a double mastectomy, stay flat on the left side, but reconstruction implant on the right side. And my surgeon told me that he did speak to another surgeon who said, there's no point me having the right side done yet. But then I kind of pushed for it because as much as I hate having it done, I thought I've had cancer once at this age. I don't want to risk having it again in the other side. So I knew I was definitely I definitely pushed for the double mastectomy. It was just the option of whether I wanted to stay flat on both sides or the implant. And I did go for the option of having an implant on the right side because when I have reconstruction for my left side, it's sounding as if it's going to have to be DIEP, so stomach tissue reconstruction. And my surgeon did tell me there is the possible option, if there's enough tissue there, of having the right side done as well. So having the implant swapped. So I thought I may as well have the implant put in for now. Get used to it in case at the very worst I can't have it done. But hopefully I am hoping I'm going to be able to have it done at both sides when it comes to it. I'm still having reviews with my oncologist. I think for the next year or two, I'm going to be seeing him every 3 to 4 months, so he can check me over, see how I'm getting on. So it's really reassuring because even though you're cancer free, there's still that fear there. What about if it comes back? Any little pain, symptom, you think the cancer's back, it's here again. So it's really reassuring that I've got that support and I've got him there. I'm going to be seeing him as much. My next thing is in January, I'm seeing the breast, well, the plastic surgeon for my breast reconstruction. So hopefully, I'm going to get a better idea of the plan for that. And moving forward, it's just focusing on moving on with my life again. And as soon as my next surgery is out of the way, I can start to fully get on with my life again. So if you know something isn't right with your body, especially if you know you might be slightly high risk, say, even if you don't know you've got like the gene, luckily enough I did, but even if you know you've got cancer, a family history of cancer, push for it. You hear a lot of stories where doctors, GPs, they think, oh, it's fine, it won't be this, and they get pushed aside. But no, there is no age limit. It, as I've said before, cancer doesn't discriminate against age. If you know something is not right with your body, push for tests further, even if it means getting second opinions, going somewhere else. Just don't hesitate. Any signs that something's not right or usual, any slight change. It is tough, extremely tough. Listen to your body. That's the main thing. Do not overdo it and rely on other people. Um, don't, if the help is there, friends, family, but you're too embarrassed or you feel bad for taking the help, don't. At the end of it is your health at the end of the day, and you need to get better first and foremost. So if people want to help, reach out to you to help out, take it.